Hey there, it's Chrissy K. Rollins here, and this year I am taking my Holistic Healing Circle through a deep dive into the creative process and sharing weekly videos focused on helping to guide you step by step through understanding what it really takes to create what you desire in your life so that you can overcome challenges and limitations that have been holding you back from creating what you desire most. In this video, I'll be sharing with you a deep understanding into the role of your mind in your life and throughout the creative process, followed by a tutorial on how I press flowers and use them in different artistic creations. So if you're interested in that, stick around after this quick chat and let's get started. Okay, so in order to master the art of creating the life that you desire, one of the most essential aspects is understanding the role of your mind so that you can use your mind throughout the creative process and not have it be the thing that's standing in your way, holding you back, stopping you from taking action. Once you become aware of your mind and you have a deeper understanding of the role that it plays in your life, then you can start to be a conscious, cooperative partner with your mind and use it as a tool to help you move towards creating that which you desire most. But if you're not aware of the role of the mind, then it will creep in, it will take over, it will flood you with doubts, frustration, confusion, and stop you before you even get started. And how does this happen? Well, the major part of how this happens is that 90% of the choices that you make in your life are driven by your subconscious mind. 90% of the choices. So for example, think about the last time that you took a shower. Did you have to consciously tell yourself to reach over, grab the shampoo, open the cap, pour it into your hand, work up a nice lather, work it into your hair? No, likely you just grabbed it, popped the top, squirted it into your hand while your mind was going down a checklist of the things that you had to do for the day, thinking about what happened the night before, anywhere other than the present moment, consciously making decisions. So once you become aware that your mind is part what it tells you is going on and part silently running the show on 90% of the choices that you make, then you can begin to understand why creating change can be such a struggle and such a hardship. If your conscious mind is saying, I want to make a change, and only 10% of your decisions are being driven by your conscious thinking, that other 90% of your actions, your habits throughout the day are being driven by your subconscious mind. So what is the mind for? The mind's job is to keep you alive, not to create your hopes and your dreams. See, the mind is a safety organ in your body. It works on its own independently, just like your heart, just like your lungs, just like your eyes. You don't have to tell your eyes to blink. You don't have to tell your heart to pump blood. You don't have to tell your lungs to inhale and exhale. And you don't have to tell your mind to start doubting or worrying. It's going to do that all on its own. And it does this because its job, until you start to create a conscious cooperative partnership with your mind, its job is strictly solely to keep you alive, to remember what happened last time, how did that go, and how can you be better prepared for when you run into it again. The problem with that is that if you just leave it unchecked, you let it run the show, it's going to focus more on keeping you safe than getting you to where you want to be. Once you become aware that your mind's job is to just keep you safe and alive, then you can consciously allow yourself to come back to the present moment, check in with your conscious mind, and make a conscious choice on if conditions are indeed too hazardous to proceed or if it's worth taking the risk. So now that you're aware that 90% of your choices are made by your subconscious mind, you can start to consciously connect back to the present moment, make decisions to move forward or not, and realize that what you want and desire, it lies in that unknown space. Check out the last video if you want to hear a little bit more about the unknown and how the mind reacts to it. But if a situation is unknown and your mind's job is to keep you alive, then it's going to keep you safe from venturing into unknown danger, unknown threats, unknown situations, and keep you where it might not be the most comfortable, you might not be the most fulfilled, but you know what's coming, you know that you can survive it, you've survived it before, chances are you're going to survive it again. When you can consciously connect to your mind and come back to the present moment and remind yourself that going towards that which you desire isn't actually a threat, it's really going to move you into more of what you desire in life, then you could start to override the subconscious mind, start to reprogram it to assess situations in a different way, and then it can start to work more in alignment towards your hopes, your goals, and your dreams than continuing its default patterns of just pure safety and survival. We're going to talk a little bit more about the mind in the next video, so definitely make sure that you subscribe wherever you're watching this so that you'll know whenever that video drops. And if you want to learn more about how I press flowers, I would love to share that with you. I love doing these creative tutorials because they help you to become aware of your mind. One of the best ways to grow your conscious awareness of how your mind works is to do a creative activity, because the mind has lots of ideas about what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing as you're going towards a creative endeavor. And most creative endeavors, such as art projects like what I'll be sharing, they're safe to proceed with. So if you want to dive into it, if you've been curious about how to dry and press flowers, I'm going to show you how I do that. Now, the first thing that I do is make sure that the flowers that I gather are ethically gathered, meaning I try my best not to take from nature and what wildlife may be depending on for food sources and for pollination and all of that good stuff. I personally like to gather flowers that have already fallen or are getting ready to come off the plant by itself. Now, I'm filming this in the middle of winter, so there aren't any flowers that are blooming currently where I live, but I did have a flower off of a plant in my house, a begonia blossom, that I picked off for this demonstration purpose. So I start with fresh flowers. If you collect them from outside in nature, you may want to give them a little wash. Just make sure that there's no dirt or insects that are making home within these. I've definitely brought in many little spiders and other little critters that come in off the plants that I have gathered, even if I pick them up off the ground. So you want to make sure that they are clean, and you want to make sure that they are dry. If your flower is not dry, then you run the risk of it molding before it gets a chance to totally dry out and flatten in the press manner that I'm going to show you. You can also use store-bought flowers if you see some that are on special, or if you were given some flowers. This is a great way to preserve flowers that have a lot of meaning to you. If it was a special occasion that you got flowers, I've dried rose petals before, collected and dried rose petals. You can do individual petals. You can press whole flowers like this one and like what I'm going to be doing today. You can press the whole flower. You can press just the petal. You can press leaves. You can press other green grasses. It is totally up to you. I look for flowers and plants that have an interesting design to them, like this one here I thought was really cool. So I just picked a couple of these off the plant, making sure that I'm not harming the plant, depleting the plant from what it needs. And they work really nice to press as well. So you can do individual petals, you can do a whole entire flower, you can do part of a plant. It's really up to you. I will tell you that the best results that I get are from flowers that don't have a lot of bulk to them. If they have a big fat centered head to the flower, or center to the flower, or if they overlap each other a lot where it makes it really bulky, like for rose, for example, those are a little bit more challenging to press the whole flower. Instead, I'll just pick off the petals and do them individually instead. And then you can do a lot of really creative, beautiful layouts just using the flower petals instead of the whole flower itself. When you can press a whole flower, they turn out really super cool. So I encourage you to give that a try too. This is experimenting. This is where the mind starts to creep in and starts to tell you, do this, don't do that. Or if you have a mind like mine, always wanting to get everything perfect, always wanting to do everything the right way and never wanting to mess up anything, you might psych yourself out of the project before you even get started, but I'm here to give you permission to experiment. Allow trial and error to lead the way so that you can discover what way works best for you. I'm going to share with you my best tips, like making sure that they are dry before you press them, because I learned in the past when I was super excited to reveal my freshly pressed flowers, only to find that they were covered in mold and stuck to the paper. It wasn't very exciting. So if I can save you some of that heartache, I definitely would love to do that. But give yourself permission to just experiment. There's no right or wrong way really to do this. I'm just sharing with you the technique that I've used over and over again with really great results, because you likely will have the same great results as well. So you want to find a flower, you can harvest it off of a plant, you can find it that's fallen on the ground, you can take it from store-bought flowers, whichever way you feel called to do it, totally can work for you. Individual petal or the whole flower, whatever it is. I typically remove it from the stem unless the stem's really tiny and flat already, like this one that I'm working with. It's very small. But again, if you're working with like a rose, it's got that big bulky stem, it's not going to press very well unless you have like a legit flower press, which is always an option, but I don't have one of those. So I use what's around my house, and that's what I'm going to show you. Once you have your flower, once it's cleaned and once it is dry, it is ready to be pressed. Now you can use different kinds of materials to press your flower in. I most often use either a wax paper or a piece of parchment paper. And quite honestly, I like the parchment paper better. And what I also like along with this is just using blank copy paper. I make sure that there's no ink on the paper because I don't want any of that to transfer off the paper onto the flower, but just a plain sheet of paper, white paper, color paper, that doesn't usually matter as long as it's like, you know, just your standard copy paper. You could probably use notebook paper as well. I just haven't had any on hand to try it out. But what I do is fold the paper in half, much like I do here. Then I place the flower right into the center. And I do my best to spread out the petals so that they can lay flat. I will show you what that looks like. Once I have my flower selected and the paper that I'm going to use, I typically just fold it in half, and then I do my best to lay the flower out flat, however it is that I want it to press. Sometimes I want it to press kind of closed up. Sometimes I want to spread it out. This little begonia blossom has such a lovely little center to it. I'd like to capture that as much as possible when I press it. So I'm going to just like lay it down, spread the petals out as best as I can. And you might find that it has a little mind of its own, which is totally fine. You can go with how it works with you. But as you hold it in place, just bring the paper over top, flattening it out. And then I like to grab a big fat book. I borrowed my daughter's dictionary today to show you this. And I just open it up towards one of the pages in the back, find a spot to stick it, and I stick it right inside. That's another reason why it's helpful to work with dried flowers, because not only do you eliminate the chance of the flower molding, but then you don't have to worry about getting the book that you're using to press it wet. Now you're going to leave this pressing for about 2 weeks. Within about 2 weeks time, sometimes about a week, week and a half, I usually just wait a full 2 weeks before I check it. Within that time, you will find that it will pull out the moisture that's there, because every flower has a little bit of moisture in its petals, and it will give it time to not only flatten, but also completely dry out. So in the end, you are left with just the dried flower, dried blossom, dried petal, and it is preserved, ready to be used for a future date. This one that I'm showing you, I dried about 1.5 years ago, and it is still totally fine. What I do is I collect my pressed flowers. Once I have them pressed and they're dried and they're ready, I put them in a little airtight container, one for organizational purposes, but also just to help to keep them preserved and make sure that nothing heavy is going to come in contact with them and crunch them and break up the petals, because they do become very dry and very fragile at this point. You may find that some flowers, even this begonia blossom, might be some of the petals are a little bit more delicate, and if you press them too hard with too much weight, you actually will just obliterate all the construct of the inner workings of the flower, and it doesn't preserve very well. I'm hoping that this begonia turns out really well. It's the first one that I have done like it, and I have had some that in the end they just didn't work out. I will tell you that hydrangea blossoms work really, really well, and what I love most about hydrangeas, This one, actually, I just let dry on its own. And this one, again, I've had this for a couple of years. We just use it as a decoration around my house. But what I love about hydrangeas is that they're covered with all these little flowers. You can snip off each individual flower and press them out and have more flowers than you know what to do with, and a little full container just like my own. Now, what do I like to do with these flowers? All kinds of things. I use them in a lot of creations that I make in my Etsy shop. And if you want to hop over there and check them out, I'll drop a link down here so that you can do that. One of the ways that I do them is that I fix them onto colored glass pieces like I have here. And then I wire wrap or use different techniques in order to work with the glass to allow the flower to be a little natural adornment and enhance the look of an item such as this. I also use them to glue down on canvas panels. This one I painted with an acrylic paint in the background. Then I used shells to make a little hummingbird shape and a stick for the beak, and then just use pressed flowers and leaves to give it some little foliage that the hummingbird is coming up to. All different ways that you can use this. Another popular item in our Etsy shop are the handcrafted journals that I make, and I use dried flowers, pressed flowers to put onto the cover in various different designs, bringing in a very natural element, lovely little connection to nature, and just a little unique touch to a handcrafted item. If you already dry flowers and press flowers, if you do this differently, like for example, you might use a microwave or an oven. I have seen these techniques done. I don't own a microwave, so I've never tried that myself. I found that just pressing them in a book works amazingly well. And if you can just wait 2 weeks, then you have exactly what it is that you need to work with on the other side. If you don't have 2 weeks and you want to do something a little bit speedier, maybe search around for a video that shows you how to dry them using your microwave, because it absolutely is possible. I just don't own one, so I don't know. Now, if you do them differently, drop in the comments, share with me what works for you. If you have a really great technique for preserving the color of flowers, I'd love to know that too. I don't do anything to enhance the color of the flowers that I use. I just let them have nature take its course, and whatever dried presentation they show in the end is what works out. Sometimes they stay blue, like these gorgeous hydrangea blossoms did. They were blue when I first brought them into my home. They stay blue after I press them. Others kind of lose some of their color and the color drains out. Like for example, this one that I showed you was a really brilliant purple when I first pressed it. And as you can see, it just has a very pale lavender left behind. If you know ways to preserve the color, I'd love to learn from you. So definitely share that. And if you have any comments, feedback, definitely drop that down in the comments below. And if you want to go more in depth into this journey on creating what it is that you desire in your life, then I invite you to hop over to my Patreon community, where I am guiding my holistic healing circle through this process. Ongoing support week after week, all year long. Thank you so much for watching. Again, hit subscribe wherever you're watching this out so that you know whenever the next video comes out. I look forward to reading your comments, and I thank you for joining me today. Feel free to share this video with others, and I look forward to seeing you back again next week. All right, love you. Bye.